And welcome to Tuesday's edition of Big Blue Kickoff Live here on Giants.com, YouTube, as well as the mobile app. He's Matt Citak. I'm Lance Medow with you for the next 60 minutes. Multiple ways you can interact with us here on the program. You give us a ring, 201-939-4513. You could also use social media, hashtag Giants Chat. We're both on Twitter. He's at Matt Citak, one word. I am at Lance Medow, one word, last name Medow. Today's episode is always presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Football Giants. And we are broadcasting from the Giants podcast studio, presented by Hackensack Meridian Health. Keep getting better. So Matt and I will provide some of our takeaways from the Giants' loss to the Packers at MetLife Stadium on Sunday. Another heart-wrenching loss, 27-20, as they have now dropped 5 in a row. And Matt, unlike some of the other losses in recent history, I mean, this was not a game where the Giants led by double figures, but it was a back-and-forth flow. You know, each team had a legitimate shot late in the game, especially with how the possessions went. And it's almost as if the defining moment of the game, I would argue, is a bit of the best way to describe how the contest played out. And it was a 50-50 type of game, where it was who wanted it more down the stretch. And granted, Jameis Winston was picked off in the end zone, but I want to start before that, the Packers' ultimate go-ahead drive. You get them in a 3rd and 10, right? Jordan Love, he took a shot down the field to Matthew Golden, and then incomplete pass to Romeo Doubs, who couldn't hold on to it. And Love just flips it up there. I mean, this is a jump ball. This is a center fielder in the outfield, right? Going up to see whether or not he can make the catch. And you've got Savion Williams, a young upcoming wide receiver, against Cordell Flott. And Williams made a heck of a play. He went up, jumped up, made the catch, and now all of a sudden they have a fresh set of downs. And I would say the same thing with what Christian Watson did in the end zone. He was one-on-one on Corey Black. Dane Belton came over at the safety position, but Love put the ball where it was either going to be a catch by Watson or it was going to be an incomplete pass. So you got to give credit to the opposition, but you saw 2 examples of the opposing wide receivers go up, make plays for their respective quarterbacks, and Isaiah Hodgins deserves a lot of credit. You know, he came in, he made a lot of plays. There just wasn't enough of that to balance out what Green Bay did, especially down the stretch.
Yeah, I mean, for the Giants, it was just kind of more of the same, honestly. You know, the game kind of came down to the defense not being able to come up with the big stop when they needed it most. I mean, Jameis led the team down the field. They scored the go-ahead touchdown early in the fourth quarter. Midway through the fourth quarter, all you got to do is come up with a stop and then milk the clock. And you highlighted a couple of those plays, the deep pass to Savion Williams, the touchdown to Christian Watson. Those are just, you know, kind of more examples of the defense not being able to come up with that clutch big play late in the game. And that's after, you know, the other thing that's been really hurting this team basically all season, which is the run defense. I mean, if you told me that Josh Jacobs was going to leave in the first half and not play in the second half, I would have said, you know, the Giants have a really good chance at having a great day in terms of limiting the Packers' run game. Packers still averaged over 5.5 yards per carry, 128 yards on 23 carries with the touchdown. Emmanuel Wilson, it wasn't the most efficient. He averaged just under 3.6 yards per carry, but 128 yards on the ground, 5.5 yards per carry. I mean, this is the same issues that have kind of been affecting the Giants all season. And, the offense wasn't great, obviously. Going from Jackson Dart to Jameis Winston, I think it was fair to expect a little bit of a drop-off because of how well Jackson Dart's been playing. Jameis was fine. The interception, a lot of people are talking about that play, whether or not Jalen Hyatt kind of pulled up at the end of the route, which led to the interception. Even if he didn't, I think that would have been a 50-50 ball with the defender and still might have gotten picked off anyway. But for the most part, I thought Jameis, played all right. He led the team. They had, not counting the very last play of the game, the strip sack and the kneel down right before half, the Giants had 7 drives. 5 of them went 50 or more yards, which you'd sign up for that.
Sure.
However, only 3 of those 5 ended with points.
That's the key.
That for sure is the key. Again, it's about finishing on both sides of the ball. You got to get points on the board, whether it's touchdowns, sometimes settle for field goals, and stop the other team from making those big plays. And the Giants just, on both sides of the ball, failed to do that on Sunday.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Matt, because that was my other major takeaway. First of all, in comparison, the Packers were 4 for 4 in the red zone. So, I mean, that's textbook finishing every drive and putting minimum 6 points on the board. But let's peel back the layers a little bit more in terms of what you were talking about. And a lot of callers bring this up all the time. And for those that have been listening and viewing for quite some time, my mindset about time of possession has been well documented. And I say it's great holding on to the football. It's fantastic news, right? But it's about what you do with it. Same thing with turnovers. You could tell me, Matt, you take the ball away 5 times. Okay, well, what did it lead to? If it led to 3 points, who cares that you took the ball away 5 times? So you're going to look at the box score. If you didn't watch one snap of this game, you're going to see the Giants had the ball for nearly 36 minutes in time of possession. The Packers had it for just over 24. So let's round it out. That means they were plus 12 minutes, Matt, in time of possession. That is astounding. To be plus 12 in time of possession, you'll sign up for that. But then the next question is, okay, what did you do with those extra 12 minutes? And as you were hinting at, if you look at the lengthy drives, and there were a lot of them, the 2 big misses were the fact that you had a drive in the first half, okay, that went 16 plays, 56 yards. It ate up 9 minutes and 46 seconds off the clock. This is after the Packers score a go-ahead touchdown to make it 19-13. They left the offense out on the field 4th and 3, and Jameis Winston gets sacked. Big, huge missed opportunity. You know, even if you get a field goal there, once again, we don't know how the remainder of the game plays out, but to walk away with nothing, Matt, that was a backbreaker. And then the one that ended with the interception. Now, that's the automatic killer because of where you were in the game, but that went 10 plays, 51 yards. So between both of those drives, the Giants ran 26 plays, and they went over the century mark and held the ball, here's the difference, for 12 to 13 minutes. And the problem is that differential showed absolutely no production. And maybe that's just a simplistic breakdown, but Matt, based on what we're talking about, that's the difference in the ball game here.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. And that's kind of, I would say it's been not as big of an issue with Jackson Dart at quarterback, but whether it's been Russell Wilson or Jameis Winston, it has been a little bit more of an issue. Now, hopefully, Jackson Dart, clears the concussion protocol in the next day or two and is back for Sunday's game against Detroit, because going up against that high-powered offense that is going to score a lot of points, especially coming off of that loss against the Eagles where their offense did not look great, they're going to come up looking to drop, 40 points on Sunday. And
they're aggressive. They keep their offense out of the field.
For sure. Dan Campbell, it didn't work on Sunday, but went for it 5 times on 4th down. Now, the Eagles stopped him every time, but I don't know if the Giants are going to have that same success trying to stop them 5+ times. So, yeah, I mean, again, Jackson is his return would elevate the offense and help raise the floor. And, we've seen the offense operate almost every single game with Jackson at quarterback at a pretty high level. I mean, the Saints game was an exception. It wasn't great. Some of those other games, like the second Eagles game, obviously was not great, but they've been scoring 20+ points just about every single week and not struggling to put points on the board, which Sunday it was, Packers have a great defense. So credit to them, credit to the Jeff Hafley, great coordinator. But I don't know, I didn't have a ton of confidence that the offense was going to go out there and just drop a lot of points.
You're talking about Green Bay, right? You're referring to, or the Giants?
No, the Giants
okay,
offense,
I just wanted to make sure
Jameis Winston under center, dropping a lot of points on this Packers defense. Detroit's defense certainly has its holes, especially in the pass defense. The secondary is very banged up, but their run defense is pretty elite. And if they completely take out the Giants' run game on Sunday, the offense is gonna rely solely on Jackson Dart and his arm. And while that's been great, he's still a rookie. He's still going through some growing pains. So yeah, it's
also
tough.
Yeah, Matt, it's a different style fight too against the Lions, right? Detroit is much more comfortable getting into a track meet with you, so they'll just outscore you.
Correct.
Green Bay is more of the grinded out philosophy. Case in point, the Packers had lost their previous 2 games, and they scored less than 14 points in each of those games. Now, granted, it was against different opponents, and to each their own every single week based on the opposition. But Green Bay came out and surpassed its tally from the previous 2 games combined against the Giants.
Without Josh Jacobs for more than half the game.
Exactly. So, you're seeing them evolve, but also they're comfortable if they're going to tell you, hey, methodically go up and down the field. The Giants, 16 plays. See if you can score on us, and we'll make a stop, and we'll be fine with that. Whereas the Lions, they'll let you score after 16 plays, but then all of a sudden, in the blink of an eye, they're going to come back with 5 plays, 70 yards, touchdown. So it's more of a question, and the onus, I would say, is more on maybe the Giants' offense in a game against Detroit, whereas this was more of a game on the Giants' defense to make stops in a closer game in crunch time down the stretch to alleviate the pressure on the offense. And unfortunately, it didn't work out. With respect to your point about the Packers' run game, it wasn't as if, they had an enormous amount of explosive runs, but it goes back to timing. And the one run that stood out to me is when Jordan Love goes out of the game and Malik Willis comes in, and he adds a new dimension. Not that Love is a statue, but Willis, when he took over for Love last season, when Love was banged up, they would add him into the run game. And there was a zone read play where Willis ran for 16 yards. And now all of a sudden, you need to account for the quarterback being that extra weapon out of the backfield that will take off. And I don't know, for some reason, that run of all runs jumps out to me more so than anything that Emmanuel Wilson may have done in place of Josh Jacobs. They picked their spots wisely, whether it was Love extending the play, but the Malik Willis was key because what happened on that drive, Matt, they ultimately finished in the red zone. And, talking about 50-50, Watson made another great grab, right? I mean, he's got, Deonte Banks hanging over him, and somehow he still secured the football. And I know Giants fans may not want to hear that perspective, but, sometimes you do just need to tip your cap to the opposition and say, the guy made an incredible play. Both of Watson's touchdowns were, and I hate using this phrase because it's cliche, but they were above the X's and O's type of plays, meaning the quarterback put the ball in a 50-50 position where the defense can make a play, the offense can make a play, and his guy came through.
Yeah, the only issue, or not the only, but the big issue is that pretty much every time the Giants defense has been put into those situations, those 50-50 balls where someone has to go make a play, they're letting the other team go make that play. Sure. They're not stepping up and making the play themselves.
But it's there for the taking, I guess, is what I'm getting at.
100%.
Yeah.
But, being there for the taking doesn't do you any good.
No, not at all.
If, 10 out of 10 times it's the other team that is going to go out there and actually make the play. The one run, I slightly disagree with you. Emmanuel Wilson's touchdown run, that I felt like was, I don't want to say the worst run defense play for the Giants, but just the effort on that play
it went right up the gut.
It just went right up the gut. I mean, I don't want to single one person out because it's not one person that gave up the touchdown, but Deonte Banks on that play, I scratched my head figuring out what he was trying to do there. He didn't make much of an effort to try to stop him. I don't know what was going on there, but I want to give you a stat. 73.7%. That is the success rate opponents have had against the Giants in the red zone this year. Giants have
that's a problem.
The 32nd ranked red zone defense this year. Almost 3 out of 4 times they are giving up a touchdown when a team gets inside the 20. It's tough to win a game when you're letting your opponent score with that ease. And you look at the flip side, the Giants' red zone offense ranks 27th, scoring a touchdown 48.7%, less than 50% of the time. It's going to be tough to beat any opponent in the NFL with production, close to the goal line, close to the end zone like that. And especially when you have a schedule as tough, we knew this schedule this year was going to be very tough for the Giants. You got to make the plays. It's when you're going up against this level of talent, even if you're going up against subpar teams like the Saints. In the Saints game, you could argue that the Giants are, when healthy, at least at that time of year, were a better team on paper than the Saints. But the Saints came up with the plays when they needed to and ended up winning by double-digit points in a game that the Giants could have had, but they turned the ball over 5 consecutive times. So, you get close to the goal line, whether you're on offense or defense, and this is kind of goes for just a similar theme for the whole season. The Giants just need to start stepping up and having guys make those key plays. That's just been missing all season.
Well, and as far as your point about, you may look better on paper or even in the standings, I mean, all of those things can be offset by mishaps and mistakes that clearly piled up against the Saints. And, you're numbers with respect to the red zone, so the offense is not helping offset the defensive struggles. I think that was stated very clearly based on the disparity in terms of what has played out in the area. And to me, when you're struggling to stop teams in the red zone, it's a product of not having a good run defense. Because once again, Matt, what do teams need to do to be successful in the red zone? They need to be able to run the football because the defense is on top of you. There's not enough spacing to spread everybody out and throw the ball religiously. And good teams that can block up front, win those small battles, and push the pile forward, they're going to finish with touchdowns. And that's the biggest struggle right now for the Giants. The other thing that I wanted to bring up, just to piggyback off of the run you brought up with respect to Emmanuel Wilson, no doubt about it, they went up 19-13. But the reason why I at least pointed out Willis is the Willis run came on 3rd and 8. Okay, and he ran for 16 yards. That Wilson run came on 1st and 10 from the 11.
Yeah.
So there was a little bit more flexibility. If you stop Willis, you give Matt LaFleur something to think about. Maybe he goes for a field goal, despite the windy conditions and the kicker struggles. Or, maybe they leave the offense out on the field. You have a chance to make a 4th down stop. That's why I guess that stood out to me. But once again, everybody's perspective can be different. There's no right or wrong answers with respect to that. But that was the reason why, even after the game, and I was looking at the numbers like you, and I was like, boy, it didn't seem from an optics standpoint as if the Packers were getting like these big chunk runs, but it's all about the timing. And that was the thorn, I thought, in the side of the Giants. And the other reason why that stuck with me is, even though there's still a lot of football left, Jordan Love went out of the game. You figure, okay, the Packers, they weren't necessarily planning to see Malik Willis. Maybe they're disoriented a little. And I thought Willis did a heck of a job coming in, and their offense didn't miss a beat. And LaFleur even talked about this after the game. And I think part of it is because Willis has had some starting experience within the Green Bay scheme. But, you got a hard hit on Jordan Love. You roughed up his shoulder, which is what you want to do. You don't want to see anybody, God forbid, get hurt, but you want to get your hits and licks on the QB. And Willis now has to come in. It's 2nd and 16 from the Giants' 40, Matt, okay? And once again, this is still early in the first quarter because it was 1st and 20 when Love scrambled for 4 yards. And then on the very next play, after Brooks ran for 8 yards, Willis runs for 16. So now it's 1st and 10 from the Giants' 16. It's a fresh set of downs. And think about how much more manageable it is for the backup quarterback after that run compared to if he had to face 4th and 6 or whatever it may be in the limited options in the playbook. So, just to add more context, that's why that play in particular I thought was an early defining moment for Green Bay and how they were going to handle that Giants defense.
Yeah, no, it's totally fair. I get where you're coming from with that. That was a huge play, and you're right. It extended the drive, set them up for a touchdown. The Giants' third down defense, I will say, that's like, and this is not anything to like hang your hat on, but it's been middle of the pack this year. It's not been, as low as the red zone defense has. But again,
wasn't great on Sunday though.
No, it was definitely not great on Sunday.
7 of 11 Green Bay.
And it's it's not great. Even if you come up with, let's say you stop a team on half of its tries or even more than half of the tries, if you're letting the conversions almost immediately turn into points, then it doesn't matter if you come up with a couple of stops. And especially if you can't stop them on 4th down either. I mean, I know this didn't really come into play this past Sunday, but as we touched on earlier, you better believe that the Lions are going to be going for it on 4th down this upcoming Sunday. Dan Campbell does not hesitate to go for it on 4th down. So you're not only going to have to come up with a stop on 3rd down this coming week, but they're going to be probably several drives where the Giants will have a, let's call it a 3rd and 5 or 3rd and 6, and Detroit's going to run it to just make that 4th down shorter. If you can't come up with those stops, then the Lions offense is going to score 40-plus points on you.
Well, the concern is, based on what you were just emphasizing, is, first of all, the Lions love to run the football, and they have 2 really good running backs, okay?
Yes.
So that's problem number 1. Problem number 2 is the Giants also, because of their young, inexperienced secondary, have had some tough matchups, and the Lions also have a lot of playmakers between their receivers and tight ends, and I think the concern now is Paulson Adebo. Now, Mike Kafka spoke to the media yesterday. He was asked about Adebo having a setback in pregame warmups. That's why he didn't play, and they don't know whether or not that means he's going to miss some time, whether or not realistically he could play. I mean, just if you put 2 and 2 together, it's never a good sign. I think any coach will tell you this. If somebody has an issue in pregame warmups and is unable to play, the chances of them all of a sudden regrouping and playing the next week. That's just my personal opinion. No different than the Packers are saying the same thing. Jacobs couldn't return, so you can only imagine about how they're feeling about his access and opportunity to play this week. So you could be looking at another game where, Amon St. Brown and all the tight ends are now going to be going up against a rotational group of corners that, let's face it, have had their fair share of struggles, not just in terms of defending the pass plays, but, they're also contributions as to why the Giants have struggled to run, right? Your secondary, Matt, needs to be a second layer of defense. And, you brought up the Emmanuel Wilson touchdown. You brought up the lack of effort. Well, the secondary needs to help out, especially if the running back gets to the next layer of that defense. And you bet Montgomery and Gibbs, okay, these guys are playmakers, and it's going to take everybody to have to slow them down and put the game more on Jared Goff. And if that doesn't happen in early downs, I mean, we could be sitting here all day long and talking about third down conversion percentage. It's not going to make a difference if the Lions, A, don't face a third down or face a 3rd and 1 and a 3rd and 2 because of how productive their run game is on those earlier downs.
Yeah, honestly, I know we're still discussing the Packers game, but just
we do both here on a Tuesday.
But
yeah, it's allowed.
Looking to Sunday, the running backs that's not even the part of the Lions offense right now that kind of scares me the most, because we know they're going to want to run the football. And in Dan Campbell's ideal world, they run the ball 30 to 40 times on Sunday. Montgomery, 20 plus carries, Gibbs, 15, 20 carries. The guy that's kind of scaring me, and especially now that I kind of agree with you in terms of Paulson and Debo, nothing's guaranteed, and we'll find out more when, Coach Kafka speaks tomorrow, but chances are I would think he probably won't be able to go this week, because of that setback, and it was only Sunday, a week later for him to not be able to play and then be able to suit up. I would be a little surprised. The guy that worries me the most, especially because of how he's playing and how much of an effort Dan Campbell recently has seemed to, since he took over play calling, to get him the ball, is Jameson Williams. I look at this, the Giants secondary, and if there's no Adebo, I'm not sure who's going to be able to match up well with Jameson Williams and his speed. Maybe Cordell Flott, but who's guarding Amon-Ra St. Brown then? They have a very talented wide receiver duo, and 2 games ago, Dan Campbell took over the play calling for the Lions and made a concerted effort to get Jameson Williams the ball. So that's kind of the guy, especially because Sam Laporta's on IR, so he's not going to be out there on Sunday. The other tight ends on the Lions, Brock Wright, that matchup doesn't scare me that much. But Jameson Williams just taking the top off of the defense, maybe multiple times, that scares me on Sunday.
No, it's a very fair point. And that's why I would say we either focus on the run defense or the back end, and the Lions pose problems in most of those areas.
That's why they're potentially the best offense in football. One of the best, if not the best.
Now, you are getting them, to your point, at a time where maybe they've had some struggles, but sometimes when you're coming off a game where you have issues, it gives you more of a reason to emphasize that during the week of practice and have a very different outlook and game plan, especially if you're going up against a defense that is unlike what Philadelphia has presented, of course, over the course of this season.
And they had back-to-back road games. This is their return back to Detroit, and we know since Jared Goff has been there, the offense has just been a lot better playing at home inside the dome than when it's outdoors, which is where obviously they played at the Link this past weekend. Outdoors, the offense couldn't really get anything going. I think based on them being held to 9 points this past week, again, Dan Campbell's going to want this offense looking more like it did against the Commanders a week before when they scored 44 points.
Well, and I'm glad you brought up the environment, because the Giants have struggled immensely on the road. They're on this lengthy losing streak, a franchise-long skid, and it's been quite some time since they've been able to, play their best football away from MetLife Stadium, and you're going into a domed environment where it's going to be loud and the Lions are hungry. So, that also can create some issues in terms of, even if Jackson Dart plays, communication, you don't want to pick up penalties, you don't want to stall drives. It wasn't too bad mishap-wise yesterday outside of the turnovers for the Giants. That's why they were able to sustain some of these lengthy drives. But you're in your own backyard. And while Packers fans do travel well, and there was a nice contingent, very different animal in terms of what they're walking into Detroit, especially based on how the team has performed over the last few seasons. All right, let's open up the phone lines as we move forward here on Big Blue Kickoff Live. Today's episode presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Giants. We are in the Giants podcast studio, presented by Hackensack Meridian Health. Keep getting better as we continue the dialogue, recapping the Packers game, looking ahead to the Lions as well. And we check in with Jason in New Haven here on BBKL. What's happening, Jason? What do you got for us?
Hey, guys. How you doing?
Doing all right. What's on your mind?
You, Jason?
Good. I'll make some quick points and I'll get off the air. Yeah, man. I want to give kudos to the offensive line for Sunday. I know we lost. I wasn't necessarily thinking we were going to win the game, even though, which that'll be my next point. But anyway, I want to just a positive. Our offensive line has been played well above my expectations for the year. They was able to run the ball on Green Bay. I know Jameis he got sacked twice, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
But one of them was that last Hail Mary.
Correct, by Parsons,
Right. So, do I put that on the O-line? Jameis was trying to make a play at the end. So, but overall, man, I really felt like we kind of held Green Bay's D-line in check, and we held Denver's D-line in check. We've held the Eagles, the first Eagles game, so we played pretty well. I'm very, very excited about how our O-line has played. Has it translated to wins? No, but that's more of a bigger picture thing. Secondly, as far as Detroit, while, yes, I think they're 10.5-point favorites on us. And granted, that's probably correct. But I will say this, and this is the conundrum I've had this year, and I'm sure you guys will agree. Man, yes, we're going into Detroit, but I heard the same thing when we was going into Denver. Oh, how are we going to beat Denver? Well, now, we didn't beat Denver. I get that. But, man, I with our offense always gives us a chance. I mean, my issue has been the defense. Now, it could be a mixture of the play calling, the personnel. It could be a little bit of both. But I don't think we're ever out of a game. We haven't really, outside of the Niners game and the second Eagles game, we've been in a lot of these games. Like, nobody thought we were going to go toe-to-toe with Denver. Nobody had us, running the ball effectively against Green Bay. We was in that Green Bay game. And for whatever reason, we've had troubles this year closing out games. So that to me is, that to me is the issue. Is we need to get back into it. I think it's really a mindset thing now. And I know maybe you guys won't agree, but I think a lot of sports, when it comes to sports, it's an emotional thing, right? It's a confidence thing. And right now, I just don't feel like we're in a moment where we feel we could close these games out, right?
Well, I mean, listen, Jason, I don't mean to jump in here. I agree with you. I think it's an emotional game, but I would say if you're not confident in your abilities, then you do not belong in the NFL. That would be my response to you. So, I mean, I think we're getting a little bit too much into the weeds. Do maybe players get dejected under certain circumstances? But there's a lot of guys on this roster that are not going to be here next year because of their contract or a new staff or whatever it may be, which means if you're not playing your best or you don't believe in your abilities, once again, there's probably not going to be a place for you in the league. So I don't buy that they don't feel that they can make plays. I just think it's the lack of execution and it's timing. It's not being in the right spot. It's miscue. It's not wrapping up a guy and bringing him down. It's not winning a jump ball. I mean, I don't know if that's a mental thing. I just think that's more of the physicality of the game and, once again, not executing from that standpoint. Right. The other thing that I wanted to throw out with respect to your point about the offense, and this goes back to a point that Matt brought up, I think the offense has clearly been better than in years past, but the disparity still remains. They're much better in starting games. If you notice, they went down the field, they scored on the opening drive again, right? But then the second half is not the same as the production of the first half. And keep in mind, since the Broncos game, the Giants have scored 24 points or less in each of their last 4 games, which still puts a lot of pressure on your defense. So I think we're seeing really good first halves. The second halves are not necessarily matching the level of intensity and the ability to move up and down the field that we're seeing out of the gates.
I agree. And I just real quick, Jason, to your first point, I'm glad you brought up the offensive line because obviously when Your team is 2-9. There's not a whole lot to, harp on positively thinking. But the offensive line has been, I think, a lot better than pretty much everyone was expecting outside of this building coming into the season. The O-line has been, again, it's just been solid. The years past, it has been one of, if not the biggest weakness of this team. This year, they are holding their own. I mean, going up against this Packers pass rush with not only Micah Parsons, but also Rashawn Gary on the two edges, not to mention some incredibly talented linebackers that are great at getting after the quarterback as well, and Edrin Cooper and Quay Walker. They gave up 2 sacks, and we already said one of them was on the very last play of the game where they knew the Giants were just going to try a Hail Mary from, 55 yards away. So for pretty much 59-plus minutes, the offensive line gave up 1 sack. PFF had them down for under 10 total pressures allowed to this talented Packers pass rush. The run game finally got going. The Giants were able to actually run the ball with, some pretty good success. Tyrone Tracy averaged over 4.5 yards per carry. Going into this past week, Pro Football Focus, which every single week puts out a ranking of the top 32 offensive lines, they rank every team's offensive line. Going into this past week, they had the Giants all the way up at number 11. That is the highest I've seen the Giants offensive line ranked by anyone in years. And then they went out and had another, I would say, pretty solid performance against Green Bay. So again, it's great. The offensive line is playing pretty well, but if you're not winning, I understand it doesn't mean a whole much. It doesn't mean a whole lot, but I am just glad that you brought that up because that is one unit that I do think deserves some credit for how they've been playing.
And Lance and Matt, let me just finish this because I know you got other callers. So, Lance, to your point, and then so the first year of Deonte Banks, and that's why I say confidence, right? I remember watching him his rookie year, flying around the ball, very, very talkative, in your face. And in the last 2 years, has he lost his talent? No, he's always been a talented corner. I just think his confidence is shot. Now, there could be other reasons. It could be him not stepping up to the plate. It could be the coaching scheme. I don't know. I'm not in the office. So that's one thing. And then the third thing, the last thing, I think we have been in these games, right? We have been in these games. A lot of these games have been winnable games. It's not like past years where we went into games like, man, this is really a tall task, right? This year we've thrown blows with the Denvers and the Eagles and those kind of teams. Yeah, we've been blown out, the Niners and the last Eagles game, but I think we're right on the cusp. And I'm not going to give up. I think Shane deserves another shot. And we'll see what the end of the year brings. And I'm still confident in the team. As long as they play hard, that's all I can ask for. So I appreciate it, fellas. Thank you.
Appreciate the phone call.
Thank you, Jason.
And once again, it's not saying that the offense hasn't been good. It's just, once again, there's a disparity. And while everybody talks about the defense not making plays down the stretch, and nobody's disputing that, but just think about if your offense scores another touchdown in the fourth quarter, you look at the Denver game, and I know Dart was hit, the interception, okay, that's a lost possession. The Chicago game, the lost fumble, that's a lost possession. You put points on the board, who knows? Maybe you hold on. Maybe the defense is not put in a position where it's now a precarious spot. All of those things add up. So that's what I think has been at least noticeable from an offensive standpoint. But as far as the offensive line, the Giants ran the ball 38 times, Matt, in Sunday's game against the Packers. And I like to go back and I like to listen to the opposition, hear what they had to say. Micah Parsons, he was asked about the Giants' game plan, and he said, we're getting opponents every week. And they're showing things that they hadn't necessarily done religiously or consistently in previous matchups. And he said they never expected the Giants to come out and run the ball as much as they did. That was what he said in terms of 38 times. Now, game flow allowed that, but he thought with Jameis Winston, and we know Jameis can be a gunslinger, right, Matt? I mean, that's his MO, and, he doesn't shy away from taking shots, and there were a lot of close interceptions for the Packers in that game, okay? How many drops?
That is for sure.
They were walking that fine line. So let's not overlook that. But he mentioned that they did not expect the Giants to be so run-heavy. But I also think if you're Mike Kafka and the coaching staff, you're anticipating it's going to be windy. And even if you have a veteran quarterback, the wise game plan is keep the ball on the ground, protect the ball, and if you have success with your offensive line, you can accomplish that feat. And kudos once again for them to be able to carry out that game plan and not have to get pass happy in a situation that didn't really call for that to occur with success. I mean, look at the kicking game. It was an absolute mess for both teams, whether it be field goals, extra points, or even in terms of special teams. I mean, that Packers 60-yard punt was huge to flip the field, and the wind absolutely played a role in that.
Yeah, I do think Mike Kafka deserves some credit. I thought he called a pretty good game for his first game as the team leader. As you brought up, clearly the Packers were not expecting the Giants' offensive game plan that they came out and ran, and obviously it did not result in a win. But again, this was a talented Packers team that the Giants were in it until the very end. They had a chance to tie it at the end of the fourth quarter. Obviously they didn't, but I do think just Kafka just deserves a little bit of credit, because I do think he kind of had the Green Bay defense a little bit on their heels, which is what you want. I forgot what else I was going to say. My other point.
No
I had a point that I was waiting. I had a point I was waiting to make.
We got still plenty of time in the show, Matt. It's okay. We won't put you on the spot.
I do remember now. I agree with Jason that the one thing that I think we've kind of seen just almost every single week is the Giants have a chance basically every single week, and especially when Jackson Dart is at quarterback, they have a chance. They are in these games until the fourth quarter. Now, I agree with him that this team right now is struggling with obviously being able to close out games and come up with those big plays. I don't want to keep harping on that, but with Jackson Dart at quarterback especially, this team does have a chance against just about any opponent that they play. Now, the one reason why I was sounding, I guess, so nervous about this coming week's matchup is that with the Green Bay, I am more concerned about the Packers' defense than their offense. Their offense, I think, is solid. It's good, but the defense is the biggest strength of that Packers team. The opposite is the case with the Lions. They will lean on their offense heavily. And obviously, not breaking any news here, the Giants defense has been struggling this year and in, almost all facets. So the Lions with their top-ranked offense going up against the Giants defense that really has struggled to slow down opponents, that is the reason why I just was coming off as a little bit worried about this coming weekend's matchup, because for the Giants to have a chance this weekend, the defense is going to have to step up in a very, very big way. And it's just, unfortunately, not something we've seen them do, at least not in a month now? We haven't really seen them step up in a big way since that Eagles Thursday night game, which was only a little more than a month ago. It feels like a year ago, though.
I agree with your sentiment, though. Going into every game, at least the way that I look at it is, what facet can you not have damage the game? And I would say if you're the Packers, from the Giants' viewpoint, can't have the defense damage the game. Especially the Packers also, once again, had scored less than 14 points in each of the last two games. They have not been good in the red zone, which, is another example of the Giants becoming the get-right game for some teams. Green Bay, by the way, 2 of 6 in the red zone. The previous two games against Carolina and Philly, 4 for 4. The numbers don't lie from that standpoint. But the Lions, okay, even though their offense had struggled against Philadelphia, and here's another game in which the opponent is coming off a Philadelphia matchup. I don't know if that's just coincidence or whatever it may be, but Philadelphia's done a number against plenty of opponents. The Lions are by far a much more dangerous team on offense than defense. Now, they're healthier on defense than they were last year. Remember, they lost Hutchinson. They were banged up. I mean, they were bringing guys off the street. But the definition of that team, the identity is we're going to outscore you as opposed to we're going to grind it out. So I completely agree.
Well, their
in terms of the
secondary
viewpoint.
is pretty banged up right now.
Well, but the guys up front, though, are in much better shape. If you and I were having this conversation last year. Well, but even some of their defensive tackles, Matt, were gone too last year.
Oh,
my goodness.
For sure. But I mean,
it was awful.
Just have it. Aiden Hutchinson is a absolute game wrecker.
Disruptor.
He is, he probably won't win Defensive Player of the Year because of the season Myles Garrett is having and on pace to have, but he's right up there among the best players in the NFL. So just the fact that he is back, obviously, I agree with you. As much praise as I was giving the offensive line before, this is going to be a very tough matchup against the Lions' defensive front, because that is the strength of their defense is up front. They do have a lot of injuries on the back end of things. We'll see if any of those guys that have missed the last couple of weeks are able to return. But up front, they are healthy, and that is going to present a problem for the Giants.
Let's head back to the phone lines. We've got Randy in California with us here on BBKL. What's happening, Randy?
Good morning, gentlemen. How you guys doing today?
Doing all right.
Good.
What's on your mind?
How are you?
Hey, I don't mean to beat the drum, but at some point this season's kind of already slipped by us, kind of obvious, right? But what is the last couple of years? It's been the offensive line, correct?
That certainly has been an issue.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so the quarterback issue was also kind of part of the problem. So what is if you guys' honest opinion, what is the piece we're missing? What is it? Is it a receiver? Is it, you know what I mean? What do you guys consider on each side of the ball the X factor that we're missing? And I appreciate you guys' time, and go Big Blue.
All right, Randy. Appreciate the phone call.
Thank you, Randy.
Well, I don't think it's so simple as you give the Giants this position and all of a sudden all the problems go away. Case in point, and I'm not saying that Isaiah Hodgins is a Pro Bowl player, but I thought he did a really nice job under the circumstances. Now, granted, there's familiarity with the scheme, but he made a number of big contested catches. Jameis was able to rely on him. Did that single-handedly change the outlook of the offense? Did it enable them to finish drives? My answer would be no, but it certainly helped them move the chains. And then on defense, it's been a combination of a variety of factors. Clearly, they haven't been fully healthy, so that's going to go without saying impact the team. I don't think the pass rush has had the level of impact, Matt, that perhaps many people had anticipated. And I'm not just talking about sacks. I'm talking about quarterback hits, pressures, forced turnovers, you name it, everything in terms of maybe flipping the field. We were just talking about the run defense has been a huge issue. So if you want to say, oh, well, the Giants need an extra defensive lineman, the Giants need an extra linebacker, the Giants need an extra cornerback. I mean, I could sit here and make the case for all three. I wouldn't say one in particular, Matt, completely flips things around and changes the trajectory of that defense.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think you could just point to one position on either side of the ball and say, insert a talented player at this position and then all of a sudden the unit is fixed. I think, honestly, on offense, right now, there aren't too many glaring holes. With a healthy Jackson Dart, and if we're looking towards next year, hopefully a healthy Malik Neighbors, a healthy Cam Scadaboo with the pieces they have now. I guess you could say, maybe because Wan'Dale Robinson is a free agent, maybe add another receiver, and also some of the guys up front are free agents, so there will have to be some work done on the offensive line, but
including Jermaine Illuminor.
Yeah, Jermaine Illuminor, Greg Van Roden. So I don't know if there's, especially on offense, there isn't one position you can just point to and say, add a talented player at this position and they're set. Another wide receiver certainly would help, but the offense is, again, as we've been saying, the offense hasn't really been the issue. It hasn't been perfect by any means, but they've sort of been, holding their end of the bargain most weeks. Then you turn to the other side of the ball, and, I think a big part of it, you nailed it, is we went into this season and all throughout training camp talking about how the Giants' defensive line was going to be potentially the best in the league, and they just have not been playing up to that level, not even close. I mean, Brian Burns is having a fantastic season, but he's kind of the only one that's really been stepping up and being like a consistent game wrecker of those four guys up front. Abdul Carter, obviously, he only has the half a sack. I do think he's been a little bit better than the numbers, the box score numbers say. If you look at some of the underlying metrics, he is being disruptive and getting pressures, but he hasn't been able to finish them and turn those into sacks, which obviously is a big part of being a game wrecker. Kayvon Thibodeau, obviously he missed this past week, but he started off the season really strong. The first month of the season, I thought he was playing some of the best football we've ever seen him play. But then after that first month, it hasn't been up to that same level. And obviously we've spoken a lot about Dexter Lawrence. I think he would be the first to say he's not, while he is facing, a crazy number of double teams like he has last year, his production is obviously nowhere near where we've come to expect it from him the last couple of years. So that, I think, is the big first issue, is that those guys up front that were supposed to be basically the strength of your entire team have not been playing up to it. You move to the next level. Micah McFadden getting hurt in the season opener. Maybe now that we're this far into the season and we look at our record, people realize how big of a blow that was to the defense. Bobby Okereke, I mean, he's had some games where he's been okay. He's struggled at other times. I wouldn't say he's having the best season. Nothing like his first season here for the Giants back in 2023, where he was playing on like basically a Pro Bowl level. I would say maybe a game-changing linebacker could be a position that would certainly help elevate this defense next year. We don't have to get into actual like prospects and
no, but that's certainly an area where they need depth.
You drop like Arvil Reese from Ohio State into that defense.
Muasau, by the way, has been banged up too.
Muasau has been banged up. I will say Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles the last couple of weeks, I think, has been playing solid, not spectacular, but he's been playing, decent enough. He hasn't been a negative, which obviously when the Giants signed him, I think it was more to be a special teams contributor and not necessarily start at linebacker, but I think he has filled in admirably. And then obviously with the secondary, between the injuries and just some guys not playing up to the level that we expected them to play, that has been, right up there as one of the biggest reasons I think this defense has struggled so much.
No, that's why it's an accumulation of a variety of factors as opposed to just one guy putting on the cape and rescuing the team on defense. Let's head back to the lines. We got Kevin in Arizona with us here on Big Blue Kickoff Live. What's happening, Kevin?
Hey, guys. How you doing?
Doing all right.
Good.
Hey, I haven't been a coach for 18 years. I just wanted to share some, nuts and bolts of some of the things I've seen. I've called before, and I think you guys do a great job of breaking things down. It's probably one of my favorite shows when you both are on there.
Well, appreciate you tuning in.
Thank you. Yeah, it's so detailed. One thing I will say is I think right now our best defense is our offense. And I think what we need to do is I think Catherine did a great job this week keeping the defense off the field and controlling the clock. I think I was sad to see Mr. Hyatt not complete his corner route in the end zone. One thing we always taught kids is even if there's a guy standing there where you're supposed to go, you've got to run the route called, because that's exactly what Jameis threw, was the out route or the corner route, and it wasn't there because he stopped. He broke off the route, and you just can't do that. You have to run with the play that's called, and that's what happened. I feel bad for Jameis because he threw exactly where he needed to throw, and if he would have ran that route correctly, I think Hyatt would have had a 50-50 ball there. Now, going on the defense, I've been watching this, and one thing Carl Banks said a few weeks ago really struck me. You can't keep running. It's a numbers game on defense. If you're going to rush 4 and keep everybody else and primarily play man defense behind that, offensive coordinators in this league are smart. If you keep doing the same thing, they're going to pick you apart. They're going to find a way to beat you. And if you look at that game, look how many Green Bay drops they had in the past. They would have had a lot more yards. Sure. They had a lot of drops.
Yep.
And go ahead.
No, I agree with you. No, continue. Oh, okay. I'm agreeing with you wholeheartedly. Just like they dropped plenty of interceptions too, or close ones.
Here's my solution. Here's my solution. Here's my solution for the upcoming games. Mix it up on defense. It's a numbers game. Just like on offense, when we try to outnumber people and make successful runs, the same thing holds true for defense. You want to outnumber the amount of blockers, overwhelm them. Remember the Pittsburgh Steelers run blitz? They were called Blitzburg for years because you never knew who was coming. It was always a nightmare. I don't see this vanilla defense of just staying with 4 rushers all the time. Let's bring a corner. Let's, get somebody behind him to cover the guy, but bring 5.
Well, the problem is, Kevin, how confident. No, I completely understand where you're coming from. It's just if you start bringing corners, to your point, how confident are you that the guys behind that corner are going to be in position if the quarterback gets rid of the football very quickly, which is another way to counter what you're talking about. So
I think that's a great point. But listen, right now, look at the results. Look at us in the fourth quarter. What happens? We've got to mix it up somehow. We just can't keep sending 4. We weren't really getting a lot of penetration this last game. I would have brought 5. Whether it's a backer, whether it's a corner on a blitz, and just get somebody half decent back there to cover that. If it's fast enough, that quarterback's not going to have time. If that blitzer's coming, even if it's a corner, if he walks in at the last minute and shoots in there, that quarterback primarily is looking to dump it off to an outlet. If that outlet's gone, if that wide receiver's taken off down, there is no outlet there. So he has to make a decision. But if you don't force the offense to make mistakes, they're going to eat you alive in this league. And that's exactly what the problem is. They need to mix it up, especially late in the fourth quarter when you got a lead. You've got to be very creative, Mr. Bowen, and you got to really, really get down and say, okay, what can we do to change the ordinary format that people are seeing? Because those guys up in the box, they're looking and they see, okay, this guy's playing off, this guy's playing here, and they've been doing it every single series. You've got to change it up. And if they do that, I guarantee you're going to start seeing some victories here just by mixing up the defense.
All right, Kevin.
Offense is great.
No, appreciate the phone call.
Right.
Yeah, you got it. It's interesting that Kevin brought that up.
Thank you, Kevin.
Actually, I tweeted this out right before the show because, once again, I think you learn sometimes, Matt, from what the opposition says. Christian Watson was running the media through the go-ahead touchdown. And I've got the video in front of me just for our audience to understand. So he said they ran this same play about 4 times during the game. So this was either the 4th or the 5th time. They were looking for the Giants to show man defense on this play. They finally got the Giants to get into man defense because for those of you who may not be watching the play, if you go back and watch it, you're going to see Watson's in the right slot and he's matched up one-on-one with Corey Black. So this is exactly the look they wanted. Now, to the last caller's point, Kevin mentioned about the Giants consistently just bringing 4. Okay, well, as you can see, Matt, they brought 4 on this play. Okay, so you got man-to-man coverage the rest of the way with just 4 guys coming. Packers offensive line provides Jordan Love a nice pocket. He may have been hit there from behind, fraction of a second.
Got rid of the ball.
Got rid of the ball. And then Watson makes a heck of a play, and Dane Belton was late in terms of trailing, so it still proved to be a one-on-one play. Now, you bring a corner, though, okay? Let's use the caller's perspective. If, let's say, Corey Black blitzes, okay, from the slot so that you get after Jordan Love, the problem with that is, though, now Watson's got to get picked up, Matt, by one of these safeties, and Belton is lined up on the outside, and Holland is towards the middle of the field, and you got 2 more wide receivers on the left. So I'm not saying that shouldn't be in the thought process of Shane Bowen, but with the personnel that the secondary is working with right now, part of me thinks Shane Bowen's limited in terms of what he could do specifically in this department of bringing pressure from the secondary of all places.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I do also agree with caller Kevin in that you do have to obviously, disguise some looks, disguise some blitzes. You can't just have the opposing offense kind of know exactly what you're going to run.
Yep.
I agree that, in that sense, looking obviously at how the Giants were lined up, I agree you couldn't have sent Corey Black in that situation because there would have been a mismatch or just someone completely wide open. But I do agree with the caller in that you got to sometimes send an extra guy or two because we are 11 games into the season. The Giants have forced 6 turnovers on defense.
That was an issue last season. Remember, they had the whole pirate chest.
I was going to say,
Yeah.
last year the Giants ranked 28th in the NFL in terms of defensive takeaways with 15 on the season. This year, they're 11 games in. They're only at 6, which is tied for the second fewest. The Jets somehow only have 1 defensive takeaway, so they are probably going to clinch the title for fewest this year, but the Giants don't have that many more. And so sending that extra blitzer, not every time, but occasionally, sometimes, to try to disrupt the quarterback, hopefully will lead to some either like strip sacks or just bad throws that hopefully as the secondary gets more healthy will turn into takeaways. And one other point that the caller made towards the beginning of his call that I agree with completely, and especially this coming week against the Lions, the Giants' best defense this coming Sunday is going to be their offense. Is if the Giants' offense can stay on the field and sustain long drives, but most importantly, that end in touchdowns.
That's the
key. And especially in this matchup, you can't even settle for field goals. You have to get into the end zone and score touchdowns. But if you can sustain long drives and just keep that Lions offense off of the field for as much as possible and still get into the end zone, that is going to be your best chance at winning this game on Sunday.
Keep away football does not work if touchdowns is not connected to it. That's the key.
You could sustain a 10-minute drive, but if you have to settle for a 20-yard field goal at the end of the day, you're not going to win the game.
Well, and I'll circle back to how we started the show. 26 plays over the course of 2 drives for over 100 yards, no points for the Giants in this past game. We're not going back to the archives. We're going back to 2 days ago. One other item that I just saw, which is interesting about bringing pressure with the secondary. So the Giants have 59 quarterback hits, Matt, this season. And I was looking at the breakdown. Not one member of the secondary has been credited with a quarterback hit. So I think, once again, that's a product of they've been so banged up and they've had so many movable pieces back there that's why Bowen hasn't brought the heat. Now, you look at Green Bay in comparison. Green Bay has 64 quarterback hits, and you could see there's a few guys, not overwhelming numbers, and most teams are not going to have overwhelming numbers, but you at least have a few quarterback hits here or there. But then again, they've had a good portion of their key players' hands on deck. All right, let's head back to the phone lines. We got Len in Columbia, Maryland with us. What's happening, Len?
Hey, guys. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Well, hey, another loss. Disappointing. 5 in a row. We got some games up here that, maybe we can come out on the top end. Matt, I agree with you. We're keeping it close. Just not closing it out. Just not finishing. Balls back. Somebody asked, what's the big difference? What's happening? Why are we losing? That kind of question. Boy, we miss Neighbors. It's just what that loss meant. I mean, it's just taken a lot away from us, including speed. If there's a slower team, offense, defense, 53 players long, if there's a slower team, I can't imagine it. And that's the nice point about Flanagan Fowles. He actually may be able to run sideline to sideline, or at least 26 yards to each sideline from the center of the field. He's got some speed, and it shows, and it makes a little difference. And we got to work on team speed next year. We just have to get faster across the board. Hey, I thought we played okay. Winston is Winston. He's a backup quarterback. He did things. Could have been disastrous on the 2 interceptions. But hey. Okay, and we hung in. I agree with the offensive line. Everybody's been talking about it. I think collectively we might be better than we are individually. I think the fall off from Thomas on the left, or your top lineman, to who the 4th or 5th lineman is, however you want to line them up, is better this year. I think it's better, but I think collectively we're probably a little better. And a lot of things. What always bothers me, when you look at Pro Football Focus numbers, if you look at him this week, it looks like Andrew was not quite as good as he has been in previous weeks. But hell, he's playing against Rashawn Gary. The numbers don't take that into consideration. Same thing with on the other side. I think a lot of people expected Parsons to dominate. Illuminor, it was okay. He did pretty good.
No, they held their own.
Pretty good.
Yeah,
I'm not
they
a big
didn't
Illuminor
let those
fan,
guys disrupt the game.
A lot of times those numbers don't take those things into consideration. And the same thing with Dexter. Probably his best game of the year. I don't know if you guys agree with that, but, geez, could it have been better? There were a couple of plays in the 4th quarter. He was triple-teamed.
Yep. Yeah. Well,
they almost gave up on the rest of the defensive line. I think there were 2 plays in particular that I remember looking through my binoculars as close as I could get to the play. Dude, triple-teamed.
On the Emmanuel,
and the guy still had a terrific game.
On the Emmanuel Wilson touchdown run, I believe, was one of the plays that literally I believe it was the left tackle, left guard, and center. As soon as the ball was immediately put their hands on Dexter.
Other than that, dominating that backup center. One-on-one, the guy, he just couldn't handle Dexter one-on-one. So they went to 2, but in key plays, they went to 3. The other guy's got to make some plays, too. But, hey, Detroit, obviously a good team. We better bring the energy, particularly on defense. They're going to try to punch us in the nose. Dan Campbell's team does that.
Yeah.
They're going to try to punch you in the nose. They're going to play just past the whistle. I'm not saying they're a dirty team. I'm not saying that. They're going to play just past the whistle. We better punch back.
Yeah.
We better punch back, or we're going to get run off that
no
field.
doubt about it. And Len,
we got to play with a little, and we got to play with a little more energy on defense. I mean, the energy level is. I mean, I can't feel it. I can't feel it. Hey, I got a rules question that's
real quick.
Bothers me.
Yeah.
Can you handle this for one more question, guys?
Yeah, real quick. What do you got?
Okay, yeah. On so we're going into windy game conditions. When you have a holder, when you have to have a holder out there, is that a 12th man who has to run off the field immediately after the ball is kicked?
You're talking about
or is that one of the is that one of the 11 who has to drop back?
You're talking about on kickoffs, right?
Do you know?
Len, you're talking about on kickoffs, right?
Yeah, just on kickoffs. I mean, I noticed Gillum holding on the kickoff.
Yeah, so
but immediately jumping up and running off the field.
Yeah, so I know this because I was watching Sunday Night Football, and in the game in Philadelphia, it was very windy, and they faced this exact situation. The holder is the 12th person that as soon as the kicker kicks the ball, he immediately sprints off of the field.
Okay. Now, here's part of doing that. He was nice enough to pick up the tee before he ran off the field.
Well, that's slightly important because you don't want anybody to kill themselves. Yeah.
One quick one on the Lions. What bothered Goff the most on Sunday night, where he looked less than an average NFL quarterback? What bothered him the most?
The wind?
The pass rush.
Yeah,
they were in his face.
Of course. Well, I mean, and he's not the most mobile guy, and they're not going to look to run him an immense amount of time. So, I mean, I think that goes without saying. And we'll let you go, Len, on that point. Appreciate the phone call.
And the deep game was non-existent in that win. There was strong winds in Philadelphia Sunday night. And obviously, we know Detroit likes taking their occasional shot down the field to Jameson Williams.
Sure. No, absolutely. So, you limit his big playmaking ability, but, it goes back to if you're applying that logic, about what flustered Goff the most, well, it's not what the Giants have been doing so effectively, though. So you could tell me all you want. Philadelphia made Jared Goff uncomfortable. Great. Okay, can the Giants come 50% of that? That remains to be seen. And can the Giants stop the run? And if neither one of those things come to the forefront, then it's going to be a relatively long afternoon from that standpoint. That's a must. But I still think this onus is on the offense this week to keep pace with the Lions offense, given the fact that you're not going to shut down the Lions offense. And can you put together long, sustainable drives like you did against Green Bay? And can you finish with touchdowns? And you can't leave two lengthy drives with nothing to show for it. That's going to be a huge backbreaker if that happens again against Detroit.
Yeah, I talked about before about the Giants' red zone splits between their offense and the defense. Looking at the Lions, they have the 5th best red zone offense, which I don't think surprises anyone.
They've been great over the last few seasons.
But on defense, they are 25th. They are allowing touchdowns on 63.6% of opponents' trips inside the red zone. So there is an opportunity. They don't, some defenses like, let's say, the Broncos, for example, they really step up once they get close to their own goal line. Not necessarily the case in Detroit. This is a defense that can be scored on, especially with, if there are injuries in the secondary, if they don't get some guys back. I mean, similar to what we're saying about the Giants, but this is a defense that can be scored on. So we'll see if the Giants offense, hopefully with Jackson Dart back under center, is able to, keep up in this track race.
All right, that is going to wrap up Tuesday's edition of Big Blue Kickoff Live. Appreciate everybody tuning in. It is presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Giants. We are broadcasting from the Giants podcast studio presented by Hackensack Meridian Health. Keep getting better. And the archive of the show, our entire podcast network on the Giants mobile app, podcast platforms everywhere, and at giants.com/podcast. For Matt Citak, I'm Lance Medow saying so long here on Big Blue Kickoff Live. Stay locked to giants.com for all the latest, and we'll speak to you on Wednesday right here on Big Blue Kickoff Live. Have a good one.